During the Christmas dinner, the millionaire's fiancé insulted the housekeeper until the little daughter stood up to defend her. Subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. The sound of baccarat crystal clinking in toasts echoed through the main hall of the mansion in the Heights, mingling with the elegant murmurs of guests celebrating yet another Christmas dinner of the Smith family. The aroma of golden turkey, seasoned with imported spices, competed with the French perfume that permeated the air conditioning, creating an atmosphere of opulence that seemed straight out of a decor magazine. Francesca Smith discreetly adjusted the Irish linen tablecloth for the 10th time that night, her brown eyes scanning every detail of the table to ensure everything was perfect. At 50, she carried on her weathered face the wisdom of someone who had crossed the country with a cardboard suitcase and a heart full of dreams. Her calloused hands, which once planted beans in the dry soil of Texas, now polished the finest silverware with the same dedication. "Francesca!" Camilla Johnson's shrill voice sliced through the air like a sharp blade. "Did you not see that the stuffing sauce is dripping on the tablecloth? What kind of carelessness is this?" The 32-year-old socialite approached with her Jimmy Choo heels, clicking on the Carrara marble, her red Calvin Klein dress, contrasting with her perfectly styled blonde hair. Camilla had entered the Smith family's life 2 years ago, determined to turn her relationship with Robert into a marriage that would firmly place her among the elite of the city. "I'm sorry, Miss Camilla," Francesca murmured, lowering her head as she quickly wiped the small spill. "I didn't notice." "It's exactly this kind of thing that worries me," Camilla continued, deliberately raising her voice so the guests could hear. "How can someone take care of a house of this importance if they can't even see a simple sauce dripping?" Robert Smith, sitting at the head of the solid mahogany table, adjusted the knot of his Hermes tie and cast an uncomfortable glance at his girlfriend. At 45, the real estate mogul had built an empire erecting skyscrapers throughout the city, but at that moment he felt incapable of building a bridge between the two women vying for his attention. "Camilla, please," he said in a low tone. "It's Christmas." "Exactly because it's Christmas that I'm worried, Robert," Camilla retorted, dramatically gesturing with her Moet and Chandon flute. "Look at the example we are setting for Helena. A child cannot grow up thinking it's normal to accept anything." Helena Smith, sitting in her special high chair, adorned with golden bows, observed everything with her big green eyes, a legacy from her mother who had passed away when she was just 3 years old. At 7, the girl possessed an acute perception that often surprised adults, capable of picking up on the unspoken tensions that floated through the house like silent ghosts. "Miss Francesca makes the best stuffing in the world," Helena suddenly said, her childlike voice cutting through the adults' conversation like a ray of sunshine breaking through heavy clouds. An awkward silence fell over the table. The 15 guests, businessmen, doctors, lawyers, and their wives, stopped eating to watch the scene unfolding before them. "Helena, dear," Camilla said with a forced smile, "you shouldn't interrupt adult conversations. Besides, a girl of your social class needs to learn to have more discretion with her compliments." "But I like her food," Helena insisted, her eyes beginning to shine with contained tears. "And she is nice to me. She teaches me beautiful songs and makes funny faces when Daddy isn't looking." Francesca felt her heart tighten in her chest. During the 15 years she had worked for the Smith family, first for Robert's wife, then managing the house and the girl alone, she had never felt so exposed and vulnerable. Her Texan roots had taught her to value dignity above all, and at that moment she felt as if her essence was being trampled in front of strangers. "You see," Camilla addressed the guests with an air of superiority, "it's exactly this kind of inappropriate influence that worries me. An employee who doesn't know her place ends up confusing a child's mind." "Camilla," Robert's voice now carried a tone of warning, but she was determined to make her point. No, Robert, we need to be clear. Helena needs to understand the difference between being polite to employees and forming inappropriate bonds. A child of our social standing cannot grow up thinking a housekeeper is family. It was then that Helena did something no one expected. The girl stood up from her high chair with such determination that she knocked the linen napkin to the floor, her green eyes now overflowing with tears of indignation. "You can't talk to Grandma Francesca like that," she shouted, using the affectionate nickname she had created for the housekeeper. "She takes care of me when I have nightmares, makes my favorite food, and never yells at me. You are mean." The silence that followed was deafening. The only sound was the air conditioning and the ticking of the grandfather clock on the wall. Robert turned pale. Camilla opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water, and the guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Francesca, with tears silently streaming down her face, approached Helena and knelt beside her chair. "My dear," she said in her soft voice with a Texan accent, "you don't need to worry about Grandma Francesca. Just sit nicely and finish your dinner, because the turkey is getting cold." "But she was mean to you," Helena sobbed, throwing herself into the housekeeper's arms. At that moment, as he watched the scene of the blonde girl hugging the dark-haired woman in a simple uniform, Robert Smith felt something stir within his chest. An unsettling feeling that she couldn't quite name settled in, like a seed planted in fertile soil. Camilla, realizing she had lost control of the situation, forced a nervous laugh. "Well, I think someone needs some discipline," she said, trying to regain her composure. "Roberto, we need to talk about this later." But the damage was done. The dinner continued, but the atmosphere had changed completely. The guests ate in awkward silence, while Helena remained quiet, occasionally casting protective glances at Francesca, who was finishing serving dessert with trembling hands. When the night came to an end and the last guests departed in their luxury cars, leaving only the echo of their polished conversations in the marble hallways, Francesca was collecting the dessert plates when she heard bare footsteps behind her. "Grandma Francesca?" Helena appeared in the kitchen in her pink silk pajamas. "Are you leaving because of what happened?" Francesca set the plates in the sink and turned to the girl, her eyes still red. "Why do you think that, my dear?" "Because when someone fights with me, sometimes I go to my room and don't come back." The employee smiled for the first time that night and opened her arms. "Come here, my doll. Grandma Francesca isn't going anywhere, but you shouldn't have gotten involved in that adult conversation." "But I had to defend you," said Helena, snuggling into the lap of the woman who had become her greatest source of affection. "You always defend me from the monsters that live under the bed." As she rocked the girl, softly humming a lullaby she learned from her own grandmother on warm nights in the Texas countryside. Francesca had no idea that this tender moment was being observed by Roberto, who had come down to get a glass of water and was now standing in the kitchen doorway. For the first time in years, the businessman saw his daughter truly happy and protected, and for the first time in his life, he began to question whether what he considered appropriate social standing was worth more than Helena's genuine happiness. Upstairs, Camilla was finishing her makeup in front of the mirror in the master bedroom, planning her next strategy. That employee had become a bigger obstacle than she had imagined, but she hadn't come this far to be defeated by a simple domestic worker from the countryside. The war was just beginning. The first days after the Christmas dinner brought a subtle but noticeable change in the atmosphere of the Smith mansion, like summer rains that announce themselves with heavy clouds before pouring down on the city. Tension began to accumulate in the marble hallways, seeping into the air-conditioned rooms like an invisible fog that everyone felt, but no one dared to mention. Francesca woke up at 5 in the morning, as she had done for the past 15 years. But now the morning ritual had a different taste. As she prepared coffee in the spacious kitchen with its black granite countertops and state-of-the-art appliances, she felt the weight of watchful eyes, even when she was alone. The familiar aroma of roasted beans, which once comforted her like a maternal embrace, now seemed to carry a bitterness she couldn't explain. "Good morning, Grandma Francesca." Helena appeared in the kitchen at exactly 7, as she did every morning, her little bare feet gliding across the heated floor. The girl wore a flannel pajama set with a unicorn print, her tousled blonde hair forming a golden halo around her still sleepy face. "Good morning, my princess," Francesca replied, but her voice carried a caution that hadn't existed before. "Do you want Grandma to make your pancakes with honey?" "I do." Helena bounced over to the high stool at the breakfast bar, swinging her legs as she watched Francesca mix the batter. "Grandma, why doesn't Daddy's wife like you?" The question hit Francesca like a punch in the stomach. She paused, stirring the batter for a moment, carefully choosing her words. "Oh, my dear, sometimes people have different ways of thinking about things. Mrs. Camilla, she just wants what's best for you." "But she doesn't know me like you do," insisted Helena, with the relentless logic of children. "How can she know what's best for me if she's never seen me cry from a nightmare or taught me how to make bead bracelets?" Before Francesca could respond, the sound of Camilla's heels echoed through the hallways, announcing her arrival like a war drum. The socialite entered the kitchen wrapped in a peach-colored Italian silk robe, her hair styled in a flawless bun, even at that early hour. "Helena, dear," Camilla said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "you shouldn't be having breakfast in the kitchen. A girl of your standing eats in the dining room." "But I like having coffee here with Grandma Francesca," protested Helena, instinctively hugging the employee's arm. Camilla felt a pang of irritation at seeing that gesture of intimacy, but maintained her forced smile. "Francesca," she said, pronouncing the name with calculated coldness, "from now on, Helena will have breakfast in the dining room, and I want you to stick to your duties. No more unnecessary conversations during service." Francesca lowered her eyes, feeling the humiliation burn her cheeks. 15 years of dedication, of sleepless nights caring for Helena when she had a fever, of invented stories to chase away childhood fears, of genuine love poured into that family. And now, she was reduced to a mere employee who should stick to her duties. "Yes, ma'am," she murmured, turning back to the frying pan where the golden pancakes awaited. Roberto chose that exact moment to enter the kitchen, dressed in a navy blue Armani suit and carrying his Italian leather briefcase. The businessman had slept poorly, haunted by thoughts he couldn't organize since the scene of the Christmas dinner. "Good morning, my love," greeted Camilla, planting a rehearsed kiss on his cheek. "I was explaining to Helena about the importance of maintaining certain appropriate family traditions." Roberto observed his daughter, who now seemed smaller and more vulnerable, sitting alone on the tall stool, while Francesca stood with her back to them, mechanically flipping pancakes. "Helena likes to have coffee in the kitchen," he said, surprising himself with the defensive tone. "Roberto, dear," Camilla placed her hand on his arm, her perfectly manicured nails contrasting with the dark fabric of his suit. "We need to think about Helena's future. She's at an age where she absorbs everything like a sponge. If we allow these inappropriate bonds now, it will be very difficult to correct them later." "Inappropriate bonds?" Roberto furrowed his brow. "You know what I'm talking about." Camilla lowered her voice, but not enough for Francesca not to hear. "A child of our social standing needs to learn how to interact appropriately with the staff. Courtesy, yes, but always maintaining the proper distance." Helena, who had stopped eating her pancakes, was watching the adults with an expression too serious for a 7-year-old. "Daddy," she suddenly said, "what does social standing mean?" Roberto felt a lump in his throat. How to explain to a child concepts he himself was beginning to question? It's about the differences between people, sweetheart." "But why are there differences?" Helena tilted her head, genuinely curious. "Is Grandma Francesca different from us because she has darker skin, or because she came from far away, or because she works here?" The silence that followed was awkward. Camilla opened and closed her mouth several times, clearly unprepared for such a direct question. Roberto loosened his tie, feeling the weight of a gaze he couldn't locate, until he realized Francesca had turned and was watching him with an expression that mixed sadness and expectation. "Helena," Camilla regained her composure, "these are very complex questions for a girl your age. Why don't you go get ready for the day? Remember, we have piano lessons today. Can I ask Grandma Francesca to help me choose my outfit?" Helena jumped off the stool, clearly relieved to escape the heavy conversation. "No," Camilla was categorical. "From now on, I will help you get dressed. Francesca has other tasks to do." Helena stopped at the kitchen door, looking back with a confused and sad expression that broke Francesca's heart. "But why?" "Because that's how it should be," Camilla replied, taking the girl by the hand. "Come on, dear." As mother and daughter walked away, Helena reluctant, Camilla determined, Roberto remained in the kitchen with Francesca. The businessman poured himself a cup of coffee, the steam rising between them like a translucent curtain. "Francesca," he began, but didn't know how to continue. "You don't need to say anything, Mr. Roberto," she replied, returning to wash the dishes with precise movements. "I perfectly understand Mrs. Camilla's position." "You understand?" Francesca paused, her hands submerged in soapy water, and for a moment Roberto saw something different in her eyes. Not the usual submission, but a wounded dignity that made him feel small. "I understand that she wants to protect Helena from what she considers wrong influences," Francesca said, choosing each word carefully. "I understand that a woman like me, who came from the countryside with a cardboard suitcase, who has no education or money, may seem inadequate to care for a rich girl." "Francesca!" "But Mr. Roberto," she turned to face him, and for the first time in 15 years spoke to him as an equal, "I raised that girl. I was the one who got up in the middle of the night when she had a fever. I was the one who made up stories to keep her from being afraid of the dark. I was the one who taught her to tie her shoelaces and say, 'Thank you.' Doesn't that count for anything?" Roberto felt something break inside his chest. In those 15 years of work, Francesca had never questioned orders, had never spoken about her feelings, had never demanded recognition. It was as if suddenly he was seeing a whole person where he had only seen an efficient employee before. "It counts," he said, but his voice came out weaker than he intended. "Of course it counts." Francesca studied him for a long moment, as if trying to read something written in a foreign language. "Then help me understand," she said, "why, all of a sudden, this love became a problem." Roberto didn't know how to answer. He finished his coffee in silence and left for work, with that question echoing in his mind, as the Mercedes-Benz glided through the streets of Ipanema towards the office in Barra da Tijuca. Up in the master bedroom, Camilla watched from the window as Roberto left, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. The first step of her plan had been taken. Now it was a matter of persistence and strategy. She would not allow a simple domestic worker from the countryside to interfere with her plans to become Mrs. Smith, not even if it meant breaking some bonds along the way. March arrived in Texas, bringing with it the humid heat that made the asphalt sizzle, and turned any walk into a battle against sweat. In the Hillcrest mansion, however, the air conditioning maintained a perfect temperature of 72 degrees, creating a microcosm of comfort that contrasted sharply with the reality of most Texans facing the scorching summer outside. Helena was sitting on the bench of the Steinway grand piano, her little legs swinging in the air as she tried to reach the pedals that seemed miles away from her feet. The piano teacher, Mrs. Cecilia Johnson, a 65-year-old woman with grey hair tied in a tight bun, watched every movement of the girl with the precision of a conductor of the Texas Symphony Orchestra. "Helena, dear, your hands are too tense," instructed Mrs. Cecilia, gently adjusting the girl's posture. "Remember, the keys are your friends, not your enemies. Let your fingers—" They danced as Francesca taught you with those songs. The teacher almost slipped. She knew that any affectionate mention of the housekeeper could lead to complications, especially after Camilla had made her new guidelines clear about appropriate influences in Helena's education. Helena smiled upon hearing the disguised reference to Francesca. During the 2 weeks that had passed since the establishment of the new house rules, the girl had developed a subtle strategy to keep in touch with her grandma. She had discovered that she could transform the folk songs that Francesca taught her into piano pieces, creating a secret language that only the two of them understood. "Can I play the rain song that waters the basil?" Helena asked, referring to a children's song from Pernambuco that Francesca used to hum while tending to the sunroom garden. "Of course, my dear," replied Mrs. Cecilia, fully understanding the game, "but turn it into something more classical." As Helena began to play a melodic version of the song, transforming it into a composition that Mozart would approve, Francesca was downstairs, finishing up the cleaning of the library. The space, with its mahogany shelves filled with first editions and rare works, had always been one of her favorite places in the house. The smell of leather from the books mixed with the lavender scent of the spray she used to clean the furniture created an atmosphere of tranquility that calmed her restless soul. But that day, even the peace of the library could not soothe the storm growing inside her chest. Camilla's new rules had turned her routine into a series of small daily humiliations. She could no longer help Helena get dressed, could no longer prepare special snacks, could no longer tell stories at bath time. It was as if they were trying to erase 15 years of maternal love. With a bureaucratic eraser, the distant sound of the piano reached the library through the ventilation ducts, and Francesca immediately recognized the melody. Her Helena was playing "Rain, Rain, Go Away, for Helena Wants to Play." A sad smile crossed her face as she wiped down the glass coffee table. Even separated by the new rules, they found ways to communicate. It was at that moment that Camilla appeared at the library door, elegant in her navy blue Chanel suit, her perfectly styled hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders. She carried a notepad and a gold Mont Blanc, pen in her hand, weapons for her new offensive. "Francesca," she said in a businesslike tone, "we need to talk about some adjustments to your routine." Francesca straightened her shoulders and turned to face her employer, although the term now sounded strange in her mind. Throughout all those years, she had never truly felt like an employee in the Smith household. Roberto had always treated her with respect, and Helena was like the granddaughter she never had. "Yes, Ma'am. I've noticed some inconsistencies in your work lately." Camilla consulted her notes with the seriousness of an auditor. "Yesterday, for example, you forgot to change the towels in the guest bathroom, and the day before I found dust on the frame of the painting in the main hallway." Francesca frowned. In 15 years of work, she had never let such details slip. She was a meticulous woman, raised with the discipline that considers a job well done a matter of personal honor. I'm sorry, Mrs. Camilla, but I didn't. I'm not questioning your intentions, Camilla interrupted, raising her hand in a theatrical gesture. I understand that this new situation must be difficult for you. After all, changes are always and complicated, especially when one is used to certain freedoms. The word freedoms was pronounced as if it were a curse. Francesca felt her blood rush to her cheeks, but remained silent. That's why, Camilla continued, I've decided to implement a new supervision routine. Starting today, you will receive a daily task list, and I will personally check if each one has been completed properly. Francesca looked at the notepad as if it were a death sentence. In all the time she had worked for the family, she had never needed supervision. Roberto had complete trust in her work, and she reciprocated that trust with a dedication that went far beyond what any contract could require. I understand, she said, swallowing her wounded pride. Great, Camilla smiled, but it was a smile that did not reach her eyes. And one more thing, Francesca. I've noticed that Helena is still, how can I put it, too attached to you. This is not healthy for a child's emotional development. What do you mean, Mom? She needs to learn to depend more on me, to see me as a maternal figure. After all, Roberto and I have serious plans for the future. Camilla paused, dramatically. Perhaps you don't know, but we are planning to get married soon. The information hit Francesca like a bucket of cold water. Marriage would mean that Camilla would officially become Helena's mother, having legal power over all decisions related to the girl. That's why, Camilla continued, I want you to maintain an appropriate emotional distance from Helena. No more affectionate nicknames, no more intimate conversations, no more maternal substitute. But she's just a child, Francesca couldn't hold back. She lost her mother so young. She needs love, attention. And she will receive it, Camilla was categorical. From me. As it should be. The sound of the piano suddenly stopped upstairs, as if the music itself sensed the tension building in the library. In the silence that followed, only the discreet hum of the air conditioning could be heard. There's one more thing, Camilla said, consulting her notes again. I've noticed that you've been using ingredients, how can I say, very regional in the food. Roberto mentioned to me that sometimes he feels like he's eating country food. Francesca felt as if she had been slapped in the face. Her northeastern recipes, the spices she had brought in her memory, from Texas, the dishes she prepared with love and that Roberto had always praised, all of this was now diminished to country food. I want you to stick to more sophisticated dishes. Here's a list of recipes suitable for our standards. Camilla spread out a printed sheet. They are all French and Italian recipes, nothing too regional. Francesca took the sheet with trembling hands. Coq au vin, risotto ai funghi, bouillabaisse, dishes she had never learned to make, spices she didn't recognize, a cuisine that spoke a foreign language to her rustic palate. Mrs. Camilla, she said, gathering all the dignity she had left, may I ask you something? Of course. Why are you doing this to me? Camilla blinked, as if she hadn't expected such a direct question. I'm not doing anything to you, Francesca. I'm just organizing this house according to appropriate standards. If you feel uncomfortable with the changes, perhaps it's time to consider if this is still the right place for you. The threat hung in the air like toxic smoke. Francesca understood perfectly. Adapt to the new rules or leave. I understand perfectly, Ma'am. Great. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go upstairs to get Helena. Her piano lesson has already ended, and she has appropriate social engagements for a girl of her position. Camilla left the library, leaving behind her expensive perfume and an atmosphere heavy with humiliation. Francesca stood alone among the books, holding the list of French recipes as if it were a death certificate of her own identity. Up there, Helena had finished playing and was now whispering with Mrs. Cecilia. "Teacher," the girl said, "why do grown-ups sometimes get sad?" "Why do you ask that, dear?" "Because Grandma Francesca has different eyes. They look like when we want to cry but can't." Mrs. Cecilia felt her heart tighten. In her 40 years of teaching piano to the children of the elite, she had rarely encountered a child as perceptive as Helena. "Sometimes, my dear, grown-ups go through difficult times, but the important thing is that they know someone cares about them." Helena nodded solemnly, as if she were processing very important information. "Then I will keep caring about Grandma Francesca," she said, with the iron determination of a child who has just made an irrevocable decision, even if it has to be a secret. From downstairs, Camilla's voice called for Helena. The girl sighed, kissed Mrs. Cecilia's hand as she always did at the end of lessons, and ran down to face another day under the new rules of the house. But in her little 7-year-old heart, a silent resistance was already forming that even Camilla couldn't imagine was possible. Autumn arrived in Texas with its characteristic subtlety, bringing a cooler breeze that danced among the flowering trees and infiltrated the gardens of Hillcrest. It was a time of year that had always brought melancholy to Francesca, perhaps due to the memories of the droughts that marked this season in Texas, or the way the yellowing leaves made her think of the inexorable passage of time. That April morning, she woke up before the alarm rang. As had been happening in recent weeks, sleep had become a rare visitor, expelled by the constant anxiety growing in her chest like a weed. She put on her navy blue uniform, the same style she had worn for 15 years, but now felt like the weight of armor in a lost battle. The house was still asleep when she went down to the kitchen. Roberto had left the day before for a business trip to Dallas and wouldn't return until the end of the week. It was always during these moments of the boss's absence that Camilla intensified her siege campaign, like a general taking advantage of the absence of witnesses to advance enemy territory. Francesca prepared the coffee with mechanical gestures, but her hands trembled slightly as she measured the amount of grounds. The night before, Camilla had found a supposed stain on the mirror in the master suite, a stain that Francesca swore didn't exist when she finished cleaning. The ensuing discussion had been particularly humiliating, with Camilla suggesting that perhaps it was time to consider if age was affecting the quality of work. Age. The word echoed in her mind like a sentence. At 50, Francesca still felt strong and capable, but she was beginning to realize how her position in the house had become fragile. Without a formal contract, without labor rights, she depended entirely on Roberto's goodwill, a goodwill that Camilla was systematically eroding. The sound of small bare feet on the marble pulled her from her thoughts. Helena appeared in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, her hair messy and her eyes puffy from sleep. But there was something different in the girl's expression, a determination that didn't match her 7 years of age. "Good morning, Grandma Francesca," Helena whispered, looking back to make sure she wasn't being followed. "Good morning, my love," Francesca replied, forcing a smile. "You woke up early today." Helena approached and in a gesture that broke the heart of the employee, took her calloused hands between her small, soft palms. "Grandma, are you sad because of me?" The question caught Francesca off guard. How to explain to a child the complexities of adult power games? "Why do you think that, my princess?" "Because Daddy's wife said that if you keep spoiling me, you will have to leave." Helena lowered her voice even more. "I heard her talking on the phone with a friend. She said she needs to rid the house of inappropriate influences before the wedding." Francesca felt the ground open beneath her feet. Wedding. The word that had become her greatest threat was now confirmed by the child herself. "Helena, you shouldn't listen to grown-up conversations," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "But I had to know." Helena hugged Francesca's waist with desperate strength. "I don't want you to leave. I don't want her to be my mother. She doesn't know how to make funny faces. She doesn't know how to sing beautiful songs. And when I have a nightmare, she just says that big kids aren't afraid." Tears began to roll down Helena's little face, and Francesca felt her own heart shatter. She knelt down to be at the girl's level, wiping her tears with her apron. "Listen here, my doll," she said, looking directly into the child's green eyes. "Grandma Francesca promises one thing. As long as your daddy wants me to stay here, I will stay. And even if one day I have to leave, the love we have for each other will remain right here." She touched Helena's chest. "Safely in the heart." "But I don't want just the love kept away," Helena sobbed. "I want you here, making pancakes and singing and helping me not to be afraid." It was at that moment that Camilla came down to the kitchen, wearing a pink silk robe and feathered slippers. Her hair was pinned up in rollers, and her bare face revealed a hardness that cosmetics usually concealed. "What's going on here?" she asked sharply. Helena immediately pulled away from Francesca, wiping her face with her small hands. "Helena had a nightmare, Mrs. Camilla," Francesca explained as she stood up. "She came down to get some water." "Helena," Camilla said, completely ignoring Francesca, "how many times have I told you that when you have a nightmare, you should call me? It's not appropriate to bother the staff with these things." "But you were sleeping," Helena murmured, "and now I'm the one taking care of you." Camilla grabbed the girl by the arm more forcefully than necessary. "Let's go back to your room. And Francesca," she turned to the staff member, "I hope that next time you direct Helena straight to me instead of feeding this inappropriate dependency." Francesca watched Camilla take Helena upstairs, her heart heavy at the sight of the girl's little shoulders slumped in resignation. It was like watching a bird being caged. The hours that followed were an exercise in systematic humiliation. Camilla found fault with everything: the way Francesca had folded the bath towels too tight, the temperature of the pool water 2 degrees above ideal, and even the arrangement of the flowers in the living room too regional. Around 2 in the afternoon, when the sun turned the garden into a green furnace, Francesca was ironing in the laundry room when she heard footsteps approaching. It was Helena, who had managed to escape Camilla's supervision during the mandatory break time that the socialite had implemented. "Grandma Francesca," the girl whispered, "can I stay here with you for a little bit?" "I don't know if that's a good idea, my love. Mrs. Camilla, she's on the phone with the manicurist. It'll take a while." Helena settled into a little plastic chair she used when she wanted to help Francesca with household chores. "Can I tell you a secret?" Francesca stopped ironing and looked at the girl. There was something in Helena's expression that worried her, a premature seriousness that shouldn't exist on a child's face. "What secret, my princess?" "I've been keeping my tears," Helena said, as if revealing an ultra-secret military plan. "What do you mean?" "When she makes me cry, I don't cry in front of her. I keep the tears here." Helena pointed to her chest, "along with Grandma's love. That way she doesn't see that she's hurting me." Francesca put down the iron and knelt in front of Helena, holding her small hands. "My love, you don't need to keep your tears. When someone hurts you, you can cry. But if I cry, she'll say I'm a spoiled child, and then she'll have more reason to send you away." Helena spoke with the relentless logic of a child who had deciphered the cruel rules of the adult game. "Helena, and there's more," the girl continued. "I discovered something. She goes through Daddy's things when he's not here. Yesterday I saw her taking money from his secret drawer." Francesca's heart raced. "Are you sure?" "I am. She took several bills and put them in her bag, and then she went through his papers, taking pictures with her phone. Before Francesca could fully process this information, they heard the sound of Camilla's heels approaching down the hallway. "Helena Smith!" The voice echoed through the house like thunder. "Where are you?" Helena jumped from the chair, but before she left, she turned to Francesca. "Grandma, promise you won't leave without saying goodbye to me?" "I promise, my princess." Helena ran to find Camilla, leaving Francesca alone with a revelation that completely changed the game. If Camilla was stealing from Robert, there was much more at stake than just the future of a staff member. That night, after the house finally fell silent, Francesca lay awake in her small maid's room, staring at the ceiling and planning her next move. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel completely helpless. Camilla had underestimated two fundamental things: the intelligence of a child determined to protect those she loves, and the strength of a woman from the Northeast accustomed to surviving the harshest droughts. The war was far from over. Winter arrived in Texas with its characteristic mildness, bringing cool mornings that contrasted with the still warm afternoons of July. In the Hillcrest mansion, the air conditioning system kept the temperature perfect, but it couldn't warm the ice that had settled in family relationships. Francesca woke up that Monday with a strange feeling in her stomach. Robert had returned from his business trip on Sunday night, and she immediately noticed the change in his behavior. The businessman seemed more distant, more formal, avoiding the eye contact that had always characterized his respectful relationship with the staff. During breakfast, served promptly at 7:30 in the formal dining room, the tension was palpable. Robert was reading the newspaper, a globe with more concentration than usual, while Camilla smiled with evident satisfaction, delicately cutting an imported croissant. Helena, sitting in her special chair, was distractedly stirring her Greek yogurt, clearly sensing the heavy atmosphere that hung over the table. "Robert, dear," said Camilla, her voice melodious like the song of a siren, "I spoke with Francesca about some adjustments to the household routine. I believe some changes will be necessary for the overall well-being of the family." Robert looked up from the newspaper, casting a quick glance at Francesca, who was silently serving fresh coffee on a silver tray. "What kind of changes?" "Nothing too drastic," Camilla chuckled softly, as if discussing the color of the curtains. "Just a reorganization so that Helena has a routine more suitable for her social position. After all, she is growing up and needs to learn certain important distinctions." Helena stopped stirring her yogurt and looked at the adults with that serious expression that had become her trademark in recent months. "What distinctions, Camilla?" Robert asked, folding the newspaper. "Well," Camilla paused dramatically, "since Helena will be my daughter after our wedding, I thought it would be appropriate for her to start addressing me as mother, and naturally to maintain a more formal relationship with the staff." The silence that followed was broken only by the clinking of Helena's spoon against the yogurt container. "I don't want to call her mother," Helena suddenly said, her childlike voice cutting through the tense atmosphere like a sharp blade. "Helena," Robert reprimanded, but there was more surprise in his voice than anger. "I don't want to," the girl repeated obstinately. "My mother is gone. Helena pointed at Camilla, "is not my mother." Camilla turned pale, her perfectly manicured hands trembling slightly. "Robert, you need to correct this behavior. A child cannot speak like that to her father's future wife." "Helena," Robert leaned forward, "you must respect Camilla. She is going to be part of our family." "But she doesn't want me to like Grandma Francesca," Helena retorted, tears beginning to form in her green eyes. "And Grandma Francesca is the person who loves me the most in the whole world." Francesca, who until then had remained invisible against the wall, felt her heart break and fill with love simultaneously. For weeks she had been watching the girl silently struggle against the rules imposed by Camilla, holding back her tears like disciplined little soldiers. "Francesca," Robert said, his voice heavy with embarrassment. "Could you give us a moment?" "Of course, Mr. Robert." Francesca walked to the kitchen with measured steps, but couldn't help overhearing the discussion that followed. Camilla's voice rose several tones as she demanded that Robert take a firm stance on Helena's insubordination. The businessman's response was too low to be understood, but the defensive tone was palpable. It was then that Helena appeared in the kitchen, running with tears streaming down her face. "Grandma Francesca!" She threw herself into the staff member's arms. "She said that if I don't stop being stubborn, you will have to leave." "Calm down, my princess." Francesca hugged her, feeling the little one trembling like a leaf. "Breathe deeply with me." "I tried to be strong like you taught me," Helena sobbed. "I tried to hold back the tears, but they came out on their own." "It's okay, my love. Sometimes tears need to come out." Helena pulled back slightly and looked into Francesca's eyes with determination. "Grandma, I need to tell you something important. Remember I said she messes with Daddy's things?" "I remember. Yesterday, when Daddy came back from his trip, I saw her putting some papers back in his drawer. But before that, she took pictures of everything with her phone." Helena lowered her voice. "And there's more. She said on the phone that soon everything would be hers." Francesca felt a chill run down her spine. With each passing day, Camilla's actions revealed a more elaborate and sinister plan. "Helena, are you sure about what you heard?" "I am, and Grandma." Helena hesitated, as if about to reveal the biggest secret in the world. "I know where Daddy keeps the important things. There's a secret drawer in his office desk." "How do you know that?" "Because I once saw him open it. You have to press a little screw under the drawer." Helena demonstrated the movement with her fingers. "And there are a bunch of important papers and money." At that moment, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway, announcing Robert's arrival. He appeared in the kitchen doorway with a heavy face, his tie loosened, and an expression that Francesca couldn't decipher. "Helena, go to your room," he said, his voice more serious than usual. "Daddy, I didn't do anything wrong," Helena protested. "Go to your room, now." Helena left reluctantly, not before quickly squeezing Francesca's hand in a silent goodbye. Robert stood at the door for a long moment, as if struggling with words that refused to come out. "Francesca," he finally said, "I need to talk to you." "Yes, Mr. Robert. Please have a seat." Francesca settled into one of the chairs at the kitchen table, her hands clasped in her lap to hide the tremor. "Francesca, you have been working here for 15 years, Robert began, avoiding looking directly at her. "Yes, sir. And you have always been an exemplary employee." The use of the past did not go unnoticed by Francesca. Her stomach tightened. "But things are changing in our family," Robert continued. "Camilla and I are getting married in September, and she has different ideas about how to manage the house." "I understand." We think it might be better for everyone if you consider looking for a new position." The words hit Francesca like a punch in the stomach. 15 years of dedication, genuine love. In for the family, maternal care for Helena. All of that was being swept under the rug like unwanted dust. "Mr. Robert," she said, finding a voice she didn't know she still had, "may I ask what I did wrong?" Robert. Finally, she faced him, and Francesca saw something in his eyes that could have been embarrassment or even remorse. "You didn't do anything wrong, Francesca. It's just a matter of appropriateness. Camilla feels that Helena is too attached to you, and that could be detrimental to her emotional development." "Detrimental?" Francesca couldn't hide her disbelief. "Is loving a child detrimental?" "It's not love that's in question," Robert shifted uncomfortably in his chair. It's a matter of appropriate boundaries. Mr. Robert, Francesca leaned forward, in 15 years, have I ever crossed a boundary? Have I ever disrespected this family? Have I ever done anything that wasn't for your well-being? Robert lowered his eyes, unable to sustain the direct and honest gaze of the employee. Francesca, the decision has already been made. But I want to be fair to you. I'll give you a month's notice and a good severance package. I can even provide excellent references. Francesca felt tears burning in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She wouldn't give Camilla the satisfaction of seeing her broken. When do you want me to leave? The end of August, before the wedding. Francesca nodded slowly, absorbing the information like a sponge, soaking up dirty water. Can I make a request, Mr. Robert? Of course. Can I say goodbye to Helena properly? Explain to her why I'm leaving? Robert hesitated, clearly torn between what he knew was right and the demands of his future wife. Let's see what's the best way to do that. After Robert left the kitchen, Francesca was alone with the weight of the sentence she had just received. But curiously, along with the pain of rejection, she felt something growing inside her, a steely determination that came from the depths of her soul. If Camilla wanted a war, she would have a war. But this time, Francesca had information that could completely change the game. And a 7-year-old girl who knew all the secrets of the house. The final battle was about to begin. The second week of July brought torrential rains that transformed the streets of California into an aquatic symphony, with heavy drops drumming on the roofs and windows of the Hillcrest mansion. It was the kind of storm that made people retreat indoors, creating an intimate and cozy atmosphere that brutally contrasted with the tension that had settled within those marble walls. Francesca woke up that Thursday with a determination she hadn't felt in weeks. The days following her conversation with Robert had been an emotional roller coaster, but now a crystal-clear clarity filled her mind. If she was leaving, she would at least ensure that Helena was protected from the clutches of a woman who saw the child as nothing more than an obstacle to her ambitious plans. The morning coffee passed in sepulchral silence. Robert had left early for an important meeting with Japanese investors, leaving Camilla and Helena alone under Francesca's supervision, a situation that the socialite despised, but was unavoidable due to the businessman's tight schedule. Helena ate her pancakes without her usual enthusiasm, her green eyes constantly drifting towards Francesca in a silent search for security. The girl had developed a keen perception of domestic tensions, becoming an expert at reading adults' facial expressions as if they were maps of dangerous territories. "Helena, dear," Camilla said, delicately slicing an apple into perfect wedges. "Today we're going to have a special day. I've scheduled a meeting with the decorator to start redecorating your room." "I don't want to redecorate my room," Helena replied without looking up from her plate. "Of course you do, sweetheart. You're growing up and need a more age-appropriate environment. No more childish drawings on the walls." "I like the drawings. Grandma Francesca made them with me." Camilla felt a pang of irritation at hearing the affectionate reference to the employee once again. "Helena, how many times do I have to say that you should call Francesca by her name? Grandma is not appropriate." "Why not?" Helena finally faced Camilla with those green eyes that seemed to see far beyond her age. Because she is not your grandmother. She is an employee. But she takes care of me like a grandma would." "That's precisely the issue we need to correct," Camilla forced a smile. "When your father and I get married, you'll have a new family. My mother will be your grandmother, and I will be your mother." Helena pushed her plate away, completely losing her appetite. "I've already said I don't want a new mother, and I don't want a new grandmother either." Before Camilla could respond, the house phone rang. It was the decorator, cancelling the meeting due to the storm. Camilla hung up with evident irritation, realizing she would have to spend the entire day alone with a resistant Helena and a Francesca who was watching her with increasingly attentive eyes. "Francesca," Camilla said in her commanding voice, "I want you to organize the library today. All the books must be taken off the shelves, cleaned individually, and put back in alphabetical order by author." It was a Herculean task that would easily take the entire day, but Francesca simply nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "And Helena will stay with me in the living room, studying French. I don't want any interruptions." The next 3 hours were a battle of nerves. Helena refused to concentrate on her French lessons, constantly asking if she could go help Francesca in the library. Camilla, in turn, grew increasingly irritated, her patience running out like sand in an hourglass. It was during the lunch break that everything began to crumble. Camilla had gone upstairs to take an important call from her manicurist, a conversation that stretched over an hour, discussing details of the wedding nail decoration. Seizing the distraction, Helena slipped into the library where she found Francesca surrounded by piles of books. "Grandma Francesca," the girl whispered, "can I stay here with you?" "My dear, Miss Camilla won't like that." "She is on the phone." The phone was talking about nails. "It will take a while." Helena settled into a leather armchair. "Grandma, I've been thinking about something important." "What is it, my princess?" "If you leave, who will protect her dad?" Francesca stopped cleaning a copy of Machado de Assis and looked at Helena. "What do you mean, protect?" "I think she only wants to marry Dad because of his money." Helena spoke with the seriousness of an adult. "And if she succeeds, she will do bad things to him too." Before Francesca could respond, they heard a noise coming from Robert's office. It was strange because Camilla was supposedly still on the phone upstairs. Francesca and Helena exchanged significant glances. Silently, they made their way to the office door, which was slightly ajar. What they saw left them stunned. Camilla was leaning over Robert's desk, rummaging through the papers in his secret drawer. She had her phone in hand, quickly and precisely photographing documents. Her expression was one of total concentration, very different from the sweet mask she usually wore. Helena squeezed Francesca's hand, whispering almost inaudibly, "I told you she was doing this." Francesca watched, fascinated, as Camilla photographed what appeared to be bank documents, contracts, and even Robert's will. The socialite worked with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. It was then that Camilla found something that made her smile with wicked satisfaction. It was a document she studied carefully before photographing, and then tucked a copy into her own pocket. "Perfect," she murmured to herself. "Robert, my dear, you have no idea what's coming." Francesca pulled Helena away from the door, and they both silently returned to the library. Once safe among the books, they looked at each other with a mix of shock and determination. "Grandma," Helena whispered, "now do you believe me?" "I do, my princess, and now we need to think about what to do." "Can we tell Dad?" Francesca hesitated. How could she explain to Robert that his fiancée was stealing his documents without sounding like she was making up stories out of revenge for being dismissed? "My love, your dad might not believe us. Adults sometimes don't listen properly when they're in love." "So what do we do?" Francesca looked at the girl, seeing in those green eyes the same iron determination she felt growing in her chest. "We need proof," she finally said. "Proof that your dad can't ignore." "How?" "You said you know how to open his secret drawer." Helena nodded vigorously. "And do you think you can figure out when she will go in there again?" "I can. She always does it when Dad leaves. And she thinks I'm sleeping." Francesca felt a mix of pride and concern, seeing the girl's strategic intelligence. "Helena, What we're going to do is dangerous. If she finds out—" "She's already doing bad things to us," Helena interrupted with relentless logic. "At least now we can do something." At that moment, they heard Camilla's heels approaching. Quickly, Helena hid behind a stack of books, while Francesca returned to her cleaning task. Camilla appeared at the door, with a fake smile plastered on her face. "Helena, where are you, dear? I thought we agreed you would stay in the living room." "I was just looking at the pretty books," Helena said, emerging from behind the stack with an innocent expression. "Well, now let's get back to your studies. And Francesca," she turned to the employee, "I hope you finish this organization today. Tomorrow we have other projects for you." After they left, Francesca was alone among the books, but her mind was racing. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel completely helpless. She had an unlikely ally in the form of a 7-year-old girl, and together they had discovered something that could completely change the game. Robert Smith was being deceived in a way that went far beyond domestic issues or jealousy over a beloved employee. And Francesca Smith, daughter of the Brazilian hinterland, would not leave without a fight. The storm outside began to calm, but inside the mansion, another storm was just beginning to brew. Friday morning dawned with a clear sky and the sun shining brightly over Southern California, as if the storm of the previous night had washed not only the streets, but also set the stage for the dramatic events to come. In the Hillcrest mansion, the morning atmosphere seemed deceptively calm, but Francesca could feel an electricity in the air that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. Robert had left before 7 for a series of meetings that would extend late into the night, an agenda that Camilla had consulted several times during breakfast, with that satisfied smile that Francesca had begun to recognize as a harbinger of trouble. Helena, sitting in her special chair, was eating imported cereal with the focus of someone studying an instruction manual. The girl had become an expert at observing adults without seeming to pay attention, a skill she had developed as a survival mechanism in recent weeks. "Francesca," Camilla said, arranging her blonde hair into an elegant bun, "today I want you to do a complete cleaning of my room. And when I say complete, I mean every drawer, every shelf, every corner must be spotless." "Yes, ma'am." "Oh, and one important thing." Camilla paused dramatically, like an actress who knows exactly what effect she wants to create. "I'm going out to meet the wedding planner. It should take a few hours. Helena will stay with you, but I want her to remain in her own room, studying." Francesca nodded, but something in Camilla's expression unsettled her. There was a malicious anticipation in her eyes, as if she was savoring something that was yet to come. After Camilla left in a cloud of French perfume and the sound of her Mercedes-Benz disappeared through the gate, the house plunged into a tense silence, a silence that seemed pregnant with possibilities. Francesca began organizing the cleaning supplies, but her mind was elsewhere, processing the events of the past few days and trying to anticipate what Camilla's next move would be. "Grandma Francesca!" Helena appeared at the laundry room door, wearing a light pink outfit and with a serious expression that didn't match her 7 years. "Can I talk to you?" "Of course, my princess. But weren't you supposed to be studying in your room?" "I was, but I need to tell you something very important." Helena looked back, making sure they were alone. "I heard her talking on the phone last night." Francesca stopped organizing the cleaning products and focused entirely on the girl. "What did you hear?" "She was talking to someone about preparing the ground, and she said something about the employee won't know what hit her." Helena paused, biting her lower lip. "Grandma, I think she's planning something bad for you." A chill ran down Francesca's spine. For weeks she had felt that Camilla was scheming something beyond the daily humiliations, but she couldn't imagine what. "Helena, are you sure about what you heard?" "I am. And there's more. She mentioned irrefutable evidence and caught in the act. Helena pronounced the complex words carefully, as if reciting an important lesson. Grandma, what does caught in the act mean? Francesca felt her blood run cold. Being caught in the act meant being apprehended during a crime, and if Camilla was planning something related to evidence and being caught in the act, it could only mean one thing: a trap. My love, Francesca said, kneeling to be at the girl's level, listen carefully to what Grandma is going to say. Today, you need to be very, very alert to everything that happens in this house. If you see anything strange, anything at all, come tell me immediately. Understood? Helena nodded solemnly, understanding that she was being called for an important mission. Can I help you clean? Not today, my princess. Today it's better for you to stay away from the cleaning. The next 2 hours passed in increasing tension. Francesca cleaned Camilla's room with heightened attention, examining every drawer, every object, looking for anything that might indicate what was being plotted. The room was a sanctuary of luxury, with imported furniture, gold-framed mirrors, and a closet that looked like a French department store. It was while she was cleaning the solid mahogany vanity that Helena came running in, her eyes wide with excitement and fear. Grandma Francesca! She's back, and she brought 2 people with her. What do you mean, 2 people? A man in a suit and a woman. There, and talking in the living room, and she seems really excited. Francesca felt her stomach tighten. Unannounced visitors, especially when Robert wasn't home, were always a cause for concern. Helena, go to your room and stay there. Don't come out for anything, understood? The girl nodded and ran down the hall, her little feet making the least noise possible on the polished marble. Francesca quickly finished cleaning the vanity and was putting away the supplies when she heard voices approaching from the stairs. Camilla's tone was animated, almost euphoric. Everything is exactly as we planned, she said. The location is perfect, and the employee suspects nothing. Are you sure she's in her room now? Asked a male voice that Francesca didn't recognize. Absolutely. I gave specific instructions for her to do a thorough cleaning today. Francesca felt her heart race. Some primitive instinct, developed through the hardships of the Brazilian sertão, alerted her to imminent danger. Without knowing exactly why, she quietly left Camilla's room and hid in the adjacent bathroom, leaving the door ajar so she could observe. Camilla entered the room accompanied by a man in a dark suit and a discreetly dressed middle-aged woman. The two had an official demeanor that immediately made Francesca think of the police. Perfect, said Camilla, heading to the drawer of the vanity that Francesca had just cleaned. It's exactly where I said it would be. With theatrical movements, Camilla opened the drawer and pretended to be surprised when she found nothing. How strange, she said, her voice laden with rehearsed drama. My diamond bracelet isn't here. Are you sure this is where you left it, ma'am? Asked the suited man. Absolutely. It's a family heirloom worth over $50,000. I'm always very careful with it. Francesca watched in horror as Camilla staged a frantic search for the jewelry, opening drawers and rummaging through places where she obviously hadn't left anything. There's only one explanation, said Camilla, with forced tears in her eyes. The employee who was cleaning here must have taken it. Do you want to file a formal theft report? Asked the woman. I have no choice. It's a very delicate situation because she's worked here for years, but lately she's shown strange behavior, jealousy regarding my relationship with Robert. Francesca felt nausea rise in her throat. It was a perfect trap. Camilla had set up a situation where she would be caught with a valuable piece of jewelry in her possession at a time when she was already under suspicion due to domestic tensions. We're going to have to search the employee and her quarters, said the man. Of course. Do whatever is necessary, Camilla replied with a feigned sadness that would win an Oscar. I just hope it's a misunderstanding." At that moment, Francesca knew she was facing the most dangerous moment of her life. If Camilla had planted the bracelet in her belongings, it would be her word against that of a wealthy socialite in a situation where she was already seen as a problematic employee. But there was something Camilla didn't know. Francesca Smith had survived droughts, floods, poverty, and 15 years of domestic work in California. It wouldn't be an ambitious socialite who would take her down without a fight. Silently, she left the bathroom and headed to Helena's room. It was time to put into practice the plan they had begun to develop. The war had escalated to a whole new level, but Francesca still had a few tricks up her sleeve, and a 7-year-old girl who knew all the secrets of the house. Francesca's heart beat like a drum as she walked through the hallways toward Helena's room, each step calculated to avoid making noise on the polished marble. She knew she had only a few minutes before Camilla and the 2 companions came looking for her, and this window of time would be crucial for her survival. Helena was sitting on her bed pretending to read a storybook, but her green eyes were alert, like a little bird sensing the approach of a predator. "Grandma Francesca," the girl whispered. "What's happening? I heard strange voices." "My princess." Francesca knelt beside the bed, taking the girl's small hands in hers. "I need you to be very brave right now. Miss Camilla is trying to harm me, and if we don't do something, Grandma might get arrested." Helena's eyes widened. "Arrested? Why?" "She's saying that I stole a piece of jewelry from her, but I've never stolen anything in my life, my love." Helena rose from the bed with determination, her fists clenched like a miniature warrior. "That's a lie. You would never do something like that." Her childlike voice carried a fierce indignation. "We need to tell the truth to everyone." "It won't be that easy, my doll," Francesca explained, smoothing the girl's hair. "Ms. Camilla must have hidden the bracelet in my room. When they search, they'll find it, and it will look like I really stole it." Helena processed the information with the quickness of a smart child used to navigating the complexities of the adult world. "Then we need to find the bracelet before they do." "No, my love. If we touch things now, it will look even worse." Francesca took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. "But you said you know when she messes with your dad's things, remember?" "I remember. Tonight, when she thinks she has succeeded in harming me, she will want to mess with your dad's papers again, and this time we'll be ready." At that moment, they heard footsteps approaching down the hallway. Camilla was coming with the 2 visitors, their voices echoing off the walls like the sound of a funeral procession. "Francesca!" Camilla's voice rang out in the hallway. "Francesca, where are you?" "I'm here, Ms. Camilla," Francesca replied, stepping out of Helena's room to meet the group. Camilla was at the front, followed by the man in a suit, whom Francesca now recognized as a detective by his posture and the way he surveyed the surroundings, and the woman who was likely a clerk. "Francesca," Camilla said with a theatrical expression of sadness, "something very serious has happened. My diamond bracelet has disappeared from my room." "What bracelet, Miss Camilla?" Francesca forced a look of genuine surprise. "You know very well which bracelet. The diamond one that belonged to my grandmother. It's worth a fortune and has priceless sentimental value." The detective stepped closer, his demeanor professional but not hostile. "Ms. Francesca," he said, "the homeowner has reported a theft. I will need to ask some questions and, if you allow, take a look at your belongings." Francesca felt a mix of fear and indignation, but maintained her composure. "Of course, sir. I have nothing to hide." "I'm glad you're being cooperative," Camilla said, but there was something in her eyes that betrayed her malicious satisfaction. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." The group headed to the small maid's room on the ground floor, a simple space with a single bed, a plywood wardrobe, and a small table that served as a desk. It was an environment that contrasted brutally with the luxury of the rest of the house, but that Francesca had transformed into a home with small personal touches. Photographs of her family in Texas, a wooden crucifix on the wall, and a few plants she tended to with care. "May I search the wardrobe?" the detective asked. "Yes, sir." Francesca watched, her heart in her throat, as the man examined her simple clothes, her few possessions organized with the care of someone who values every object. Camilla remained at the door, theatrically nervous, as if suffering from the situation she had created herself. It was when the detective reached the lower compartment of the wardrobe that Francesca saw his expression change. He bent down and pulled out something wrapped in an old towel. "What is this?" he asked, carefully unfolding the fabric. There it was, a diamond bracelet that sparkled even in the dim light of the room, obviously expensive and clearly not belonging to a domestic worker. "My bracelet!" Camilla exclaimed with a performance worthy of the municipal theatre. "Francesca, how could you? After all these years of trust!" Francesca felt the world spin around her, even knowing it was a trap. Seeing the physical evidence of her supposed guilt was like receiving a punch to the stomach. "I've never seen that bracelet in my life," she said, her voice trembling with indignation. "Someone put that there." "Francesca," the detective looked at her seriously, "you are being accused of theft. You have the right to remain silent and to call a lawyer." "But I didn't do anything." Francesca felt tears of despair and anger burning in her eyes. 15 years I've worked in this house. 15 years without ever taking a single cent that wasn't mine." "Sometimes people change," Camilla said with false sadness. "Maybe the pressure of the changes in the house, the issue of the marriage. I know it's been hard for you to accept that things are different now." It was at that moment that a clear and determined voice cut through the tension in the room. "That's not true." Everyone turned to see Helena standing in the doorway, her little face flushed with indignation and tears streaming down her cheeks. "Helena!" Camilla tried to use her sweetest tone. "Dear, this is adult business. Go back to your room." "No!" Helena stepped into the small room, seeming even smaller amidst the chaos. Francesca stood there, an adult, but radiating a courage that left everyone impressed. "Grandma Francesca would never steal anything. She's the most honest person in the whole world." "Helena, you don't understand," Camilla began. "I do understand." The girl planted herself in front of Francesca like a small soldier protecting her wounded general. "And I know who's lying here." The officer observed the scene with growing interest. In his 20 years of service, he had learned that children often saw truths that adults preferred to ignore. "What do you mean by that, little one?" he asked gently. Helena looked at Camilla with an expression that mixed defiance and disgust. "She put the bracelet in Grandma Francesca's room," she said, with the crystal-clear clarity of truth. "And it's not the first bad thing she's done." "Helena!" Camilla went pale. "What nonsense is this? How can you make up a story like that?" "It's not made up," Helena turned to the officer. "She messes with my dad's things when he's not home. I saw her stealing important papers and taking pictures of everything with her phone." A heavy silence fell over the room. The officer frowned, clearly intrigued by the girl's specific and detailed accusation. "That's ridiculous," said Camilla, but her voice had lost its previous firmness. "A 7-year-old making up stories to defend a worker she likes." "It's not a story!" Helena was starting to cry, but she kept talking. "She steals money from my dad's secret drawer. And yesterday she said on the phone that soon everything would be hers." Francesca watched, fascinated, as little Helena delivered blow after blow to the trap carefully constructed by Camilla. The girl had stored all those observations and was now releasing them like an avalanche of truth. "Ma'am," said the officer, addressing Camilla with a more serious tone, "these are serious accusations. The child seems very convincing. She's just repeating things that the worker told her." Camilla tried to recover. "It's obvious she's being manipulated." "No one told me anything," Helena shouted. "I saw everything with my own eyes, and I can prove it." "How?" the officer asked. Helena hesitated for just a second, looking at Francesca as if asking for permission. Francesca nodded almost imperceptibly. "She's going to mess with my dad's papers again tonight," said Helena. "She always does that when he travels and she thinks no one is watching. If you stay hidden, you'll see." The officer exchanged a meaningful glance with the clerk. The situation had taken a completely unexpected turn, and his decades of experience told him there was much more to this story than just a simple domestic theft. "Ms. Camilla," he said, "I think it would be interesting for us to talk more about this, and perhaps it would be wise to wait for Mr. Roberts' return before we make any definitive decisions regarding the accusations." Camilla tried to smile, but her face had turned into a mask of poorly disguised nervousness. The trap was turning against its builder, and a 7-year-old had just completely changed the course of the game. The afternoon passed in a tension that seemed to electrify the air of the mansion. The officer had decided to wait for Robert's return to clarify the contradictory accusations that multiplied like waves in a storm. Camilla tried to maintain her composure, but Francesca could see small cracks in her facade of indignant victimhood. A tremor in her hands when she picked up the phone, a sweat on her forehead that makeup couldn't disguise, a growing nervousness manifesting in abrupt gestures and sharp words. Robert arrived at 8 in the evening, finding his home transformed into a crime scene. The businessman entered through the front door to find an officer and a clerk in the living room, his fiancée visibly shaken on the Italian leather sofa, and his daughter hugging the worker who had supposedly stolen a family heirloom. "What the hell is going on here?" Robert asked, loosening his tie with the tired gestures of someone who had spent 12 hours in tense meetings. "Robert, dear," Camilla stood up dramatically, "something terrible has happened. My diamond bracelet has been stolen." "Stolen?" Robert looked around, as if trying to process the information. "By whom?" The silence that followed was deafening. Camilla discreetly pointed to Francesca, who remained standing next to Helena, her hands protectively resting on the girl's shoulders. "Francesca!" Robert seemed genuinely shocked. "This can't be right." "I know how hard it must be to believe," Camilla said melodramatically, "but the bracelet was found hidden in her room. The evidence is irrefutable." Robert turned to Francesca, and she saw something in his eyes that hurt her more deeply than any accusation. A genuine doubt, a crack in the trust they had built over 15 years. "Francesca," he said slowly, "is this true?" "Mr. Robert," Francesca looked him directly in the eye, "you've known me for 15 years. In all that time, have I ever done anything to make you doubt my honesty?" Robert hesitated, and Francesca saw that he was genuinely torn between 15 years of trust and the physical evidence that had been planted in her room. "The evidence?" he began. "Dad!" Helena broke free from Francesca and ran to Robert, clinging to his legs. "Dad, she's lying. Grandma Francesca would never steal anything. It's her who's stealing." "Helena, be quiet." Robert tried to calm his daughter, but Helena was determined to be heard. "I won't be quiet. She messes with your things when you travel. She takes pictures of your papers. She takes money from your secret drawer." Robert went pale. Camilla laughed nervously. "Robert, you're not going to believe a 7-year-old against concrete evidence, are you?" "I can prove it," Helena shouted, her tears falling like rain. "She's going to mess with your things again tonight. She always does." The officer, who had been watching the whole scene with growing interest, stepped closer. "Mr. Robert," he said, "your daughter has made very specific accusations. Maybe it would be wise to check them before we proceed with the accusations against the employee." Robert looked at Camilla, who was now visibly nervous. "Camilla, are you going through my papers?" "Of course not," she replied too quickly, her voice rising an octave. "How can you ask such a thing? It's your daughter being manipulated by that woman who is trying to shift the blame." "So, you won't mind if we check?" the detective asked. "Check what?" Camilla was becoming desperate. "Your bag, for example. Your daughter said you take pictures of documents. That's absurd. You can't—" "Actually, we can," the detective said calmly. "There are suspicions of multiple crimes now. Domestic theft by the employee, but also possible invasion of privacy and theft of documents on your part." Robert headed to his office, followed by the entire entourage. He opened the drawer that Helena had mentioned and examined its contents with growing attention. "Some papers are out of order," he murmured, "and money is missing." Camilla paled even more. "It must have been her." She pointed at Francesca. "She's the one who tampered." "Mrs. Camilla," Helena said with that relentless logic of, "Children, Grandma Francesca didn't even know where the secret drawer was. Only I, you, and Dad know." It was then that the detective, who had discreetly examined Camilla's bag while everyone was distracted, found something interesting. "Mrs. Camilla," he said, "may I ask why you have photographs of bank documents on your phone?" The blood drained completely from Camilla's face. That's not... And it also seems you have a copy of Mr. Robert's will." Robert's eyes widened. "How do you have a copy of my will?" "I can explain." Camilla tried, but her voice came out as a whisper. "And there's more," the detective continued. "I found some very interesting text messages, conversations about laying the groundwork and removing obstacles." At that moment, all of Camilla's elaborate construction crumbled like a house of cards. Robert stared at her with a growing expression of shock and understanding. You were stealing from me?" "Robert, I can explain everything." "Explain," he said, his voice icy. We were going to get married. I just wanted to know our financial situation. By photographing my will, stealing my money." Helena, who had been watching everything with fascination, suddenly ran to Francesca and hugged her. "I knew Grandma Francesca was right," she said loudly. "I knew she was bad." The detective turned to Camilla with a serious expression. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to arrest you for invasion of privacy, theft, and false accusations. And I suspect that when we further examine your financial movements, we will find other irregularities." "And the bracelet?" Robert asked. "Obviously planted to incriminate the employee," the detective said. "A common tactic to divert attention from one's own crimes." As Camilla was taken away by the police, her last words were pure venom. "You will regret this, Robert. That woman will manipulate you, she and that spoiled child." But her words were lost in the California night as the mansion's door closed definitively behind her. Robert stood in the room looking at Francesca and Helena, who remained embraced in the center of the space. "Francesca," he finally said, "Mr. Robert," Francesca gently interrupted him. "You don't need to say anything. I know it was hard to choose whom to believe. But I doubted you after 15 years. I doubted." "You are human," and she was very convincing. Robert knelt before Helena. "Sweetheart, can you forgive me for not listening to you properly?" "Of course, Dad," Helena smiled. "But now will you listen?" "I will listen to everything you want to tell me." Helena looked at Francesca, then at Robert. "So listen to this. I don't want Grandma Francesca to just be an employee. I want her to be part of the family for real." Robert smiled, the first genuine smile in months. I think that can be arranged." That night, for the first time in a long time, the Hillcrest mansion felt like a home again. And Francesca Smith, daughter of the hinterland, who had survived one of the greatest betrayals of her life, could finally sleep in peace. The war was over, and love had won. December arrived in California, bringing with it the humid warmth that turned the city into a tropical greenhouse, but in the Hillcrest mansion, the atmosphere was one of renewal. 18 months had passed since that fateful Christmas dinner that marked the beginning of the greatest storm the Smith family had ever faced, and now, as Francesca prepared another Christmas feast, she felt that she was decorating not just a table, but celebrating a complete transformation. The dining room was unrecognizable. Where once the cold formality of baccarat crystal and Hermes china reigned, there was now a harmonious blend of elegance and coziness. The Irish linen tablecloth shared space with northeastern embroidery that Francesca had brought from Texas during her last family visit. Scented candles with pitanga and cashew essence competed with the aroma of turkey, creating an atmosphere that spoke of both tradition and innovation. Helena, now 8.5 years old, helped Francesca arrange the centerpiece flowers, a combination of white orchids and mandakaru flowers that perfectly symbolized the union between two worlds that had learned to coexist. "Grandma Francesca," Helena said, carefully adjusting an orchid that was stubbornly tilting, "do you remember how sad I was last Christmas?" Francesca smiled, watching the girl who had grown not only physically, but in wisdom and maturity during those turbulent months. "I do, my princess. You were afraid everything would change." "It did change," Helena said philosophically, "but it changed for the better, right?" "It changed for the better, yes." It was true. The months following Camilla's arrest had been a slow but solid rebuilding process. Robert had undergone a profound transformation, questioning not only his personal choices but his entire view of family relationships and true values. The businessman, what was once hidden behind social formalities, had learned to truly converse with her daughter and to value people for their essence, not their social position. "Has your dad arrived yet?" Francesca asked, polishing a crystal glass that would now serve both French wine and apple juice. "Yes, he has. He's in the office finishing a call, but he said it's just 5 more minutes." Helena paused, looking at Francesca with those green eyes that had seen so many difficult things in recent years. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "You can ask anything, my dear." "Do you still feel sad sometimes remembering that tough time?" Francesca stopped polishing the glass and knelt down to Helena's level, as she always did when she wanted to have important conversations. "You know what I learned, my princess? Sometimes bad things happen to teach us how to recognize the truly good things." "What do you mean?" "Before all that chaos with Mrs. Camilla, your dad was a good man, but he was a bit lost, you know. And I was happy here, but I didn't quite know what my place was in the family, and you, my doll, were a sweet girl, but you were growing up in a world where people didn't speak the truth to one another." Helena nodded, processing the words with the seriousness of someone who had matured through difficulties. "And now your dad knows that family isn't built with money or social position, but with love and honesty. I know that my place here isn't just as a worker, but as someone who is part of this family at heart. And you, my princess, have learned that you have to fight for the people you love, and always speak the truth, even when it's hard." At that moment, Robert entered the dining room, wearing a light blue dress shirt without a tie, a significant change for a man who used to dress as if he were always going to business meetings, even at home. "How are my 2 favorite women?" he asked, hugging Helena and placing a loving kiss on Francesca's forehead, a gesture that would have been unthinkable 18 months ago. "We're finishing setting everything up for dinner," Helena replied. "Look how beautiful it turned out, Dad." Robert looked at the table with genuine admiration. He had learned to see beauty in things he would have previously considered inappropriate for his social standard. "It's perfect," he said sincerely. "Francesca, you've outdone yourself." "Oh, Mr. Robert, it was Helena who helped me with everything. This girl has such refined taste that I don't even know where it came from." "It came from you," Helena said confidently. "You taught me that things become beautiful when they are made with love." Robert felt that familiar pang in his heart, a mix of pride, love, and gratitude that he always felt when he realized how much his daughter had grown in emotional wisdom. "Francesca," he said, "before the guests arrive, I want to talk to both of you about something." Francesca and Helena exchanged curious glances. "Sit here, Grandma." Helena pulled Francesca to sit at the table they had just decorated. Robert took a deep breath, as he always did when he was about to make important decisions. "These past few months have made me think a lot about family, about what really matters in life. And I've come to a conclusion." He paused, looking alternately at Francesca and Helena. "Francesca, you've taken care of me and my daughter for 15 years. You've loved Helena as if she were your own granddaughter. You taught me without even realizing it that dignity has nothing to do with a bank account and that true love doesn't depend on documents or formalities." Francesca felt tears beginning to form in her eyes. "Mr. Robert." "Let me finish," he smiled. "That's why I want to make an official proposal. I want you to be officially part of this family, not just in heart, where you've been for years, but also in the documents." "What do you mean, Dad?" Helena asked, intrigued. Robert pulled a folder from the inner pocket of his blazer. "Adoption. I want to adopt Francesca as my mother, and I want Helena to officially have the grandmother she has always had in her heart." The silence that followed was different from all the tense silences that had marked that house. It was a silence of pure emotion, of love recognized, of family finally embraced. Francesca covered her face with her hands, tears streaming between her fingers. "Mr. Robert, I don't know what to say." "Say yes, Grandma." Helena jumped out of her chair and hugged Francesca. "Say you are. Accept to be our family for real on paper, too." "But I'm just a simple woman from the countryside." "You are the wisest woman I know," Robert said, "and the person who loves this family the most. Documents don't change who you are, Francesca. They only officially recognize what you have always been to us." Francesca looked at Robert, then at Helena, seeing in both their eyes such genuine love that it reminded her of her grandmother's words in Texas. "My daughter, family is who chooses to stand by your side when life gets tough." "Then I accept," she said, smiling through her tears. "I accept to be your mother and grandmother in every way possible." Helena screamed with joy and threw herself into Francesca's arms, while Robert moved closer to hug his two favorite women. At 8 in the evening, the guests began to arrive for dinner, but they were not the same haughty and distant faces from previous dinners. Robert had invited people who truly mattered, some co-workers who had become true friends, Helena's piano teacher, who had become a family confidant, some neighbors Robert had learned to truly know, and even Mrs. Maria, the cleaning lady, from Robert's office building, who had become Francesca's friend. The dinner was a success in every way. The food, a harmonious mix of traditional holiday dishes and Francesca's specialties, was praised by all. But more important than the food was the atmosphere was filled with genuine conversations, spontaneous laughter, and heartfelt hugs. When it was time for dessert, a condensed milk pudding with a cherry sauce that Francesca had created especially for the occasion, Robert stood up to make a toast. "Friends," he said, raising his wine glass, "I want to toast not just to Christmas, but to rebirth. A year and a half ago, this table was the scene of a great lie. Today, it is the stage for a great truth. He looked at Francesca and Helena. The truth that family is not about blood or social status. It's about choice. It's about deciding to stay together through the storms. It's about love that withstands the toughest tests. Therefore, he continued, I want to officially announce that Francesca Smith is no longer an employee of this house. She is my chosen mother, the official grandmother of Helena and the matriarch of this family. Applause echoed through the room, but no sound was sweeter to Francesca than the joyful laughter of Helena and the proud smile of Robert. After the guests left, the three of them sat on the porch, watching the city lights twinkle like earthly stars. Helena was nestled in Francesca's lap, Robert in a chair beside them, all enjoying the cool breeze of the California night. Grandma Francesca, Helena said sleepily, now that you are officially my grandma, can I still call you Grandma? Francesca laughed, stroking the girl's hair. You can call me whatever you want, my princess. What matters is the love behind the name. Then I will keep calling you Grandma Francesca, Helena decided, because that's how I learned to love you. Robert watched the scene, his daughter peacefully sleeping in the arms of the woman who had become the emotional center of their family, and felt a peace he hadn't known in years. Francesca, he said softly, so as not to wake Helena. Thank you. Why, my son? The word son felt natural now, laden with genuine maternal love. For staying, for fighting for us, for teaching me what really matters in life. Francesca looked at the city lights, then back at Robert. Do you know what my grandmother used to say in Texas? She said that sometimes God sends storms for us to discover how strong we are. I think that's what happened to us. Camilla's storm? Camilla's storm, yes, but mainly the storm of discovering that true love needs to be tested, to be recognized. Robert nodded, understanding the simple yet profound wisdom of the woman he had chosen as his mother. That December night, while California slept under the tropical warmth and the mansion in Hillcrest finally breathed in peace, 3 hearts beat in sync, that of a girl who had learned to fight for love, that of a man who had discovered the true meaning of family, and that of a woman who had survived the greatest storm of her life to find, on the other side, not just a home, but a true family. The feast that had begun with humiliation ended, 18 months later, with redemption. And Francesca Smith, at 51, finally knew her place in the world, in the heart of a family that had chosen her just as much as she had chosen them. If you liked this, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and if you watched until here, comment, I watched until here, and leave your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the final screen. It's very emotional.